What's going on, everyone? First ever live stream. I think you could understand the magnitude of wanting to do something like this for the first time because, man, what news to wake up to today. Adrian Wojnarowski tweets out that Julius Randle is going to undergo that surgery that he was trying to rehab from, and he's going to miss the rest of the season. And the Knicks' title hopes just went up in smoke, and millions of people around the world, all their hopes are gone. They're done. For anyone that really expected this team to go far in the playoffs, for anyone that thought this team fairly could compete with Boston for an Eastern Conference championship, it's all gone. Poof. Just like that. So now we shift our focus to 2024, 2025. I don't know if I could do that. I don't think I can right now, especially considering the fact the Knicks were 3-0 in the games that OG Anunoby came back because they need him at the end of the day. I don't think that Randle was the big X factor. The Knicks had Randle the last 5 years, and they weren't as good as they are right now. The two X factors on this team are Brunson and Anunoby. But when you look at what Jalen Brunson brings and when you look at what defenses do to try to stop him, you understand how badly they need Julius Randle because all the focus wouldn't be on Jalen Brunson all the time. So now Brunson's going to have to deal with playoff defense with every team that he plays. Whether it's the Magic, whether it's the Cavs, whether they have to face off against the Heat again, Brunson's going to have two defenders on him most of the time. It's going to be up to the other guys to step in and carry the brunt of the offensive load like they have the last 2 months. It's been 2 months now since the Knicks lost Julius Randle and they lost OG Anunoby. Obviously, he came back for 3 games, has sat out even more since he came back. But in that time, we saw the emergence of Deuce McBride. We saw Dante DiVincenzo take so much of the offensive load as a mid-level exception guy, taking over 5 threes a game, hitting multiple a game. The guy has done a stand-up job in terms of carrying the brunt of what Julius Randle left when he went down for with his injury. So I think when you look at this team right now, when you look at their expectations, when you look at the ceiling, all of it came crashing down. Real title hopes, Eastern Conference championship hopes are gone. Where this team is at right now, and I think that this will vary among the various Knicks fans who, I think all of us, when we saw what we saw in January, the Knicks go 14-2, 15-plus net rating. They're destroying the defending champion Nuggets by 38 points in a game that wasn't close. Those people and those fans all looked at a team that had championship aspirations and got excited about a team that has not been good and has not made an NBA Finals since 1999. Where are we at right now? The Knicks could win a championship going forward. They could improve their team in the offseason. I don't think any fans want to look at that right now. They don't want to sit here and put their eyes to the future. I think a lot of people, including myself, were excited about the prospect of the Knicks competing for a championship this year. When the Randle injury happened, and this is something I discussed with a bunch of people, when the Randle injury happened, and the magnitude of the injury and where the injury happened, where he dislocated his shoulder, you do not get to come back from that 100% without surgery. What has Julius Randle been? Playing 70, 80% in the 2021 playoffs, in the 2023 playoffs. He wasn't close to the player that he was as good as he was this year at 100%. The physicality, what he brings from the perimeter, and what he's able to do in the paint as a bully. He would not have been able to do that. And I think that when you look at the style of play from Randle and how hard he worked to try to come back, which props to him. You could say what you want about Julius Randle's performances, talking about the 2021 playoffs and the 2023 playoffs, how he's kind of unraveled at the end of each season, how he's completely choked in the playoffs. Say what you want about that. The guy's a dog. You can't call him soft. He tried to come back. He tried to save this season. It's not his fault he was injured. It's not his fault that Jaime Jaquez tried to take a charge down 18 points in the fourth quarter with 4 minutes left. It's not his fault that Tom Thibodeau kept him in the game at that point. That's another story for another day. That's another topic that I don't want to discuss. I know a lot of people are probably going to bring that up because the coping is about to take place instead of the denial and the sadness from Knicks fans. They're going to start looking back at that game on January 29th against the Miami Heat, a game in which they absolutely dominated the Heat. And looking where the Knicks are at right now, losing to the Heat by 10 the other night, it's like night and day. And it's so unfortunate that we're at this point on April 4th, looking back at what could have been for this Knicks team. 14-2 in January. Absolutely dominating teams. We saw with our own eyes a Knicks team that could compete for a championship. In 2024, I know there are a lot of Knicks fans out there that grew up near the tail end of the 90s, that grew up during the Isaiah Thomas years, that grew up with the Eddie Curry trade, with the Jordan Hill pick. I can't say that I was old enough to experience it and to really take in how negative that time was as a Knicks fan in the mid-2000s, but I have witnessed what we've all witnessed over these last 10 years, which has been a completely incompetent organization who struggles to put together teams that can compete. You could look back at 12-13 with a Knicks team that was built around Carmelo Anthony, probably the best scorer in the NBA, was built around a Tyson Chandler, was built around Amari Stoudemire. That team could have competed for a championship. They never had the pieces around Carmelo Anthony to do just that. And the injuries that happened to Amari Stoudemire, the injuries that happened to a bunch of other key pieces on that team, maybe the Knicks are just cursed. Maybe we're just looking at a roster, at a franchise, at an owner that is just cursed. I got a feel for my Knicks, Mets, and Jets fan friends. I don't know how you live with yourself, but this is just never ending. It's never ending. So the Knicks with OG Anunoby and without Julius Randle can win a playoff series or two. They are currently just as good as they were last year at the exact same time. Anunoby changes everything defensively. And when you look at the pieces they've added from last year to this year, you subtract Randle, you add Anunoby, you add Miles McBride, and you add Dante DiVincenzo. I think that's a massive upgrade, obviously, with Randle as compared to last year. With Toppin, with Quickly, with Barrett. I think this team, the makeup of this team, is so much better set for success, and we'll see that hopefully in these coming years as they were last year. And you got to give credit. You got to give a pat on the back to what Leon Rose has been able to do in building this team up. If the Knicks weren't good, we would not be as upset as we are right now with this Randle news. If this happened in 2020, 2021, the We Hear Knicks, a team that had no business making the playoffs. If Randle got hurt then, of course, we'd all be upset. But what were the expectations realistically that year? A first-round playoff win? I mean, if the Knicks beat the Hawks that year, the city would have been run down with fans. That's where a lot of Knicks fans were. No one was expecting that. Elfrid Payton was the point guard of that team. You take away a Randle. I mean, he was basically taken away in that playoff series. But he gets hurt then. He gets hurt last year. He gets hurt the year before. Fans are nowhere near as upset as they are right now, and for good reason. All right, we got some comments here. Jack Cohen. Knicks are also always brutal on the road in Miami, no matter who they have on the floor, to be fair. I mean, yeah, Miami's a problem, and they also hurt every one of the Knicks. This year felt different. Like you said, a completely different feel of this team when healthy. 100%. 100%. Like, there was no doubt in my mind, and I cannot believe that I was saying this, as were a lot of other Knicks fans. There was no doubt in my mind that the Knicks could have beat Boston. And Boston is one of the best constructed teams in NBA history. I know that's not really a comparison when you look at them versus Golden State, different era of basketball. When you look at the talent in the NBA right now, the fact that the Celtics have been able to put together all of these pieces at the same time is extremely impressive. And it goes to show you, Joe, trust me, when we watch the playoffs, when we see them dismantle most of the teams in the East, it's going to make you that much more upset that the Knicks weren't in it. The Knicks didn't have a chance to take them on completely healthy. Because Boston is far and away the favorite to win the championship this year. And the Knicks were the only team built to take them down, especially in the Eastern Conference. Maybe the Nuggets could beat them. Jokic is inevitable. He's the best player in the NBA. There are a bunch of other solid teams in the West. They have to get past the Nuggets first. But what you will see in the Eastern Conference playoffs is a Celtics team that is head and shoulders above any other team, especially Milwaukee, who is slipping from the number 2 seed. They've had 2 of the worst losses that I've seen all year. 2 easy, chalked up games against the Pistons and the Bucks. They lost both. And they've lost to a bunch of other teams down the stretch, which has been completely pathetic. But right now, this Knicks team is in a spot that I don't think anyone could have expected them to be in. With actual championship hopes and dreams that all just came crashing down like that. Thank you all for joining live. I'm Bryce Gelman, talking about this devastating Julius Randle news that I think a lot of people saw coming. I saw coming myself. Not that I wanted to admit it, that it was a possibility. Listening to Fred Katz the other night, I think it was on Knicks Film School, one of the great shows they do over there, saying that this was just a guess, but he thought that Randle would come back and Anunoby would be back before the end of the regular season. Fingers crossed for that at this point, because who knows? Who knows? The Knicks, if they lose Anunoby, I'd consider just throwing in the towel on the season. Jalen Brunson in the playoffs without OG Anunoby, without all these other guys that are going to be facing huge minutes in the playoffs. I know Dante DiVincenzo has got a ring, and he will be able to deal with the pressure that comes along with being in the playoffs. But you got a Miles McBride on the team who really hasn't gotten minutes. Will he step up? I have full belief in Miles McBride. I've been a Miles McBride fan for years now. But either way, this Knicks team is in deep trouble if they can't get Anunoby back. I think that's like the bare minimum at this point. And here's a comment from my dad, of course. He should have had surgery. You forgot to. You should have gotten rid of that space right there, Dad. It should be he should. He should have had the surgery right away. I agree. I mean, but it's easier to say now because, of course, it wasn't possible for him to rehab it back. But that's not who Julius Randle is. He's not just going to sit back and be like, you know what, I'll take the surgery. He understood how good this Knicks team was. If this were any other year, Randle's not trying as hard as he did to come back, to return, to face these really solidly constructed teams in the Eastern Conference in the playoffs. He wouldn't have done that, but he did. And I think we all need to give credit to Julius Randle. We got to give him his flowers for what he did to try to get back for this Knicks team. And I think a lot of the guys on this team will look at what Julius Randle did and hopefully will be inspired to do their own work during the offseason, maybe to make a little run during these playoffs, and come back even stronger next year. Because that's where all of our sights need to be set, is to next year. We're all going to be able to enjoy maybe a Knicks first round playoff win. Maybe they'll make the Eastern Conference Finals. But at that point, they're going to have to get to the second or third seed because there's no way they are beating Boston. It's not happening. Without Julius Randle, even with OG Anunoby, they have zero chance against the Boston Celtics. And again, like I said, that says nothing about the Knicks. That just says a lot about how well Boston is constructed. It is so unfortunate now that on April 4th, and I wish that news came out on April 1st. I did see something come out on April Fool's. That was the exact same thing. My heart sank that Julius Randle will get surgery. And of course, 3 days later, it actually comes to fruition. But we are looking at a situation now on April 4th where the Knicks had expectations that are not going to be able to meet, and we all have to sit with that reality and just take it in and shift our focus elsewhere and not put the time and the effort and the emotion into this Knicks team. Like I think a lot of us have. These past few losses have hurt me more than any Knicks loss besides Game 6 of last year. More than any regular season losses have hurt ever for me, I don't think. Watching this team struggle, knowing where they could have been if Randle stayed healthy, if Anunoby didn't injure his elbow, it hurts that much more. When the expectations are higher, I think this is great. I think that this is one of the few positives in this situation is the fact that we care this much. It's the fact that we tune in night after night and put all of our energy into rooting for the Knicks, knowing what type of team they are, knowing how well constructed they are, having the hopes and dreams that only a few teams have been able to have in recent years, and that the Knicks, again, have not had since 1999. Say what you want about that 2012-2013 team with Melo, Tyson Chandler, and Stoudemire. They lost to the Indiana Pacers, and Roy Hibbert and Paul George and Lance Stevenson. You look at those two rosters, you look at them side by side, there's no reason why the Knicks should have lost that, but that's who they were at the time. There were holes throughout that roster. Their bench, their depth wasn't great. Their defense was nowhere near the level of defense that we have been seeing from this Knicks team, even without OG Anunoby. You add him to the equation, and they're one of the top 3 defensive teams in the league, even without Julius Randle. The issue that we are going to have is offensively how the Knicks are going to play and what their offensive identity is going to be now that Randle's out. We've been seeing it for the last 2 months. Do you really think that's sustainable? Do you think Jalen Brunson putting up 60, 61 points in a loss is sustainable? You saw it against the Spurs. They lost that game. When Jalen Brunson was the one guy on the floor who was able to put the ball in the basket, that is the reality that we have to face now. Jimmy Crate, I don't know how to pronounce it. Jeremy Crate says copium. No copium here. There's no copium. This Knicks team the season's over. I'm not trying to sit here and try to cope with, I guess trying to cope somewhat, but right now I think this is just like a little therapy session. My first ever live. Thank you all for joining. Got 26 people in here. It's an honor. But I wish this were under better circumstances. I wish I was sitting here after a Knicks championship. I wish I was sitting here after a Knicks first round win with Julius Randle, with the hopes and dreams of the entire city of New York with this team, which they are just not going to have now. I don't want to compare this to the Aaron Rodgers situation because it's just a completely different situation. But you saw how hyped that Jets crowd was. A team that had hope. A team that had dreams for the first time in who knows how long. And on the 4th play of the season, Aaron Rodgers goes down with his torn Achilles, and the energy, the hope throughout the entire stadium just completely dissipated. And now I don't want to say that this is going to be the same case when it comes to the first round of the playoffs for the Knicks. Hopefully they can get that home court advantage. But the energy in the Garden, I don't think you're going to be able to replicate what you saw last year. Even though the hopes and dreams, the expectations were lower last year, I think Knicks fans were excited. They dismantled the Cavs. A lot of people, NBA pundits, analysts, people on TV, we're all predicting the Cavs to beat the Knicks. The Knicks dismantled the Cavs. They destroyed the Cavs. We saw Mitchell Robinson playing some of the best basketball that we've seen any defensive center play, maybe since Ben Wallace. We're going back that far. A guy defensively having that large of an impact on a playoff series. He dominated Jared Allen and frail Evan Mobley. That was last year. Now it's this year. And the hope, the dreams, as we've been talking about here, have been completely shattered by this Randle injury news. And Jeremy says, again, it's never over till it's over. Maybe that's a little copium right there. I don't want to have false hope. I'm not a guy who has false hope. I am a realist. And there are a lot of people in my personal life who say that I'm negative, who say that I'm this, who say that I'm that. I think I'm a realist. And realistically looking at the situation, the Knicks are not getting past Boston. It would take a severe injury to one of Boston's best players for the Knicks to even have a chance to compete in a series against the Celtics. You look at their roster, top to bottom. Peyton Pritchard on the bench making no money. That's one of the best depth pieces that you see across the Eastern Conference. You put him on the Knicks, he's probably the backup point guard. I don't think he plays over Deuce McBride. But you look at the Celtics team, there's no way the Knicks can even compete against Boston. No way. Can they even beat Cleveland? Can they even beat the Magic in the first round? Let's hope. I cannot hear that Orlando Magic song, which is so catchy, you got to say, on TikTok. If the Knicks lose that series to the Magic and I open up my TikTok and that's the first thing I hear, I'm done. You'll never hear from me again. The Knicks should be able to win the first round of the playoffs no matter who they play. They should be able to get into a position where fans could look at this year and look at next year and say, wow, this team could really be successful. Because I think there was a portion of the fan base that wasn't too optimistic when it came to the Knicks' title chances this year. When I saw what they did to Denver, beating them by 38 points, dismantling a team, making a team that you never see look silly. That put it all into perspective. That the unrealistic hopes and dreams of this Knicks team were not as unrealistic as we thought. That maybe the OG Anunoby trade completely transformed the shape of the Eastern Conference standings. No, all right. Well, we got Jeremy says no copium here. Casey, what's up, Casey? Says you kind of sound like John Fanta, really. I don't know. But man, this is tough. This is tough for all Knicks fans and for New York sports fans alike. There aren't any Brooklyn Nets fans, so every New York sports fan, sorry you got to deal with the Jets. Sorry you got to deal with the Mets too. At least I've got the Yankees. But this was the one thing that I was excited for. This playoff run. Julius Randle, Jalen Brunson, who were the two, you could say arguably they were the best two-man game in the NBA by the time that Julius Randle got hurt. They had developed such a camaraderie on the offensive end that I think most Knicks fans saw that. And again, this was another thing that helped put us over the edge in terms of the expectations of a championship. Watching these two guys develop this beautiful chemistry together. And now we have to watch Jalen Brunson get hounded by defenses for 48 minutes. He's going to be playing 42, 43 minutes in the playoffs. The Knicks really have no choice. As good as Deuce McBride has been, he's not on the level of facilitator that Jalen Brunson is. He is not offensively as big of a problem, obviously, as Jalen Brunson. But I'm talking about in terms of what he forces your defense to do. He forces your defense, Jalen Brunson does, to be quick on its feet with his footwork, with his ability to break down the opposing defender, even two opposing defenders, get into the paint, get his shots. And here's another story that I think deserves a lot of talk, and that is what we've been witnessing over these last, let's say, 10, 15 games since the All-Star break, which is Jalen Brunson does not get calls. He does not have an All-Star whistle, as people like to call it. SGA gets calls that Jalen Brunson couldn't dream of getting on a night-by-night basis. It's unbelievable having to sit down and watch each Knicks game where you could see that Jalen Brunson is getting fouled, but they're just not going to call it. For whatever reason, they don't like giving Jalen Brunson calls. It is so unfortunate with where we're at right now. And again, like I said, the one positive in all of this is that we're all this upset right now. Because if Julius Randle goes down with an injury in a season that was meaningless, no one cares. And people are going to be looking towards the next year as well. No one wants to fully set their sights on next year. I don't think anyone wants to let go of these expectations that people have accepted, especially before the Randle injury. I can't let go of that. I know that a lot of other people that can't let go of that as well, because when have we ever seen a team this competent? Especially for the Mets, Jets, and Knicks fans. Especially for them. It's been 13 years since I've seen my last championship, or 12 years since the Giants won the Super Bowl. And I kind of thought that was the norm, right? Like the Giants, 2 Super Bowls in 4 seasons. Is this what we can all expect from now on? Is this how New York sports is like? With 3 championships in 5 years? The Yankees and the 2 Giants Super Bowls? And then you look 13 years later, the Yankees look good this year. The Mets, pathetic. The Jets, pathetic. Actually made some good moves this offseason. I don't want to get too off base here, but what I'm trying to get at is this is devastating. This is quite possibly the most brutal sports injury news that I've ever read. And it would have been way worse had it been at the time that it happened. I think as these past 2 months have unfolded, the expectation that he would come back, Randle, has gone lower and lower and lower and lower. Say what you want about really expecting him to come back. In your right mind, did you ever think, and knowing what you know, if you do know about shoulder injuries, did you ever possibly think that the Knicks would get a Julius Randle back that could help them compete? Maybe he would have been able to get back on the court. Maybe he would have been able to strengthen that shoulder area enough to get back on the court. What has made Julius Randle so successful this past season, before he got hurt, before that injury at the end of January? His physicality. The fact that he has fully embraced that bully personality, those bully characteristics. He looks like a mini Shaq on the court. He is stopped completely from his game. The settling from beyond the arc, the settling of the long 2, of the turnaround jump shot, of the spin move into 4 defenders. He has completely tailored his game to be as efficient as possible. Bringing Julius Randle back at 60, 70, 80% was not going to look anything like what we saw before the injury. That's the one thing that I think helped ease this eventual buildup into the news that he's out for the entire year. That you knew that he wasn't going to be the same player. I know you probably held out hope that he would have been. But Julius Randle, the bully, Julius Randle, the X factor, the difference maker in the paint, was not going to be the Julius Randle that we would have saw if he came back. The Knicks are in the 5th seed right now. Cavs lost last night. The Magic have the tiebreaker over the Knicks. The Knicks have the tiebreaker over the Cavs. And what we've witnessed over these last 3 games is a Knicks team that could potentially be beginning to start to unravel. Should have won against San Antonio. Should have won against San Antonio. Straight up. I can't get past that. I mean, Victor Wembanyama, he's unbelievable. The Knicks should have won that game. The Knicks should have won that game. The Knicks should have beat the Oklahoma City Thunder, who miraculously had SGA after being out for 2 games before, out 2 games after, but he had to play the 1 game at the Garden. Even Jalen Williams was back, had to play that game. Everyone loves to play at the Garden. SGA had to come back. He's on injury maintenance. He plays 1 game, hits the game winner. All right, See you guys in a week. Of course, against the Knicks, they had to play that game and they had to win that game where, I mean, man, I cannot get over the Jalen Brunson missed call at the end of that game. The N1 that was not called as an N1. That should have put the Knicks up even more than they went up. Should have been a tie game after SGA hit that last shot. That's another story for another day. Again, but that's where we're at as Knicks fans. This is strictly a therapy session. There isn't much structure to this. We're just talking about our basketball team who we love so much that I don't want to be a pessimist. I don't want to sound like a pessimist, but may never get back to this point. How well they played in January. So you're going to have to pay OG Anunoby. He's probably going to get 5 years, 150, maybe 4 years, 150. He's going to be making $30 million a year. And as you know in the NBA, the more guys you pay, the less opportunity presents itself in terms of being able to trade for a star player. The Knicks are not giving up OG Anunoby. He is completely untradeable. He's more untradeable than Randle is. And Randle has been, you got to give him credit. He has been the straw that stirs the Knicks drink. He has been as big of a catalyst as Leon Rose, as Worldwide West, as Tom Thibodeau has been in bringing this franchise back to prominence. You take away Julius Randle, you take away his accomplishments, and this Knicks team is nowhere near the level that they're at right now. And that offseason, I speak for every Knicks fan. Besides Alex B, Knicks Central, who loves to retweet the tweet where he said it was the best thing ever that Kevin Durant and Kyrie Irving went to the Nets. That, speaking of copium, that was copium. I don't believe that for a second that you were actually happy about that. But looking back at that offseason, the Knicks lose out on two of the top 10 players in the NBA, and they bring in this guy in Julius Randle with a lot to prove. And they bring in a bunch of other random players. They bring in Bobby Portis, so on and so forth. And Julius Randle is still going strong with the Knicks. And you wish you could have seen more of him last postseason against the Heat. You wish you could have seen more against the Hawks in the 2021 offseason. But what you can't deny is how stable he has made this Knicks team. The Knicks are inevitable now. And that's largely due to the work that Julius Randle has done for himself and for this Knicks team. And I think that this is like the icing on top of the cake. From what we've seen from Julius Randle, and we know we have a dog. A dog. I know the Yankees are overusing that term, but Julius Randle is a dog. He is a guy who's going to give 110% every time out on the floor, and what him and his doctors eventually decided that led to the announcement today was that he reasonably couldn't have done that on a bad shoulder. The New York Knicks will be back. The New York Knicks will be a championship contender next year. The Knicks will hopefully be able to go out and acquire someone that could change everything for them. Who knows how long Boston's going to be able to be constructed like this for? I cannot foresee it being something that lasts past next year, because Jaylen Brown is now the highest paid player in the NBA. He's making over $50 million per year. You got to pay Jason Tatum. You got to pay. How much longer can Porzingis play on what he's playing on? Drew Holiday's making a solid amount of money. It's not going to be possible for the Celtics to compete for as long as the primes of Jaylen Brown and Jason Tatum will intersect. So the Knicks, at the end of the day, you could say what you want. We've sat here now for 35 minutes getting this frustration and anger and sadness out. But we can look at this Knicks roster, the contracts that they have, the descending contract of Jalen Brunson, who's going to be making pennies on the dollar for the next 2 years. He will get extended within the next 2 years. Hopefully this offseason, maybe next season. The Knicks have to do it. because according to the rules, he won't be able to make the Supermax. I don't know how he gets Supermax. That will be something that I will look into, as you should as well. But the Knicks, what they're able to give Jalen Brunson is still a massive discount. What Dante DiVincenzo is making for the next 3 years. What Miles McBride is going to be making for the next 3 years. The Knicks are built to win for the next 3 or 4 years. It remains to be seen whether or not they could get healthy this offseason and stay healthy next year. And I'm interested to see what the Knicks are able to do this postseason. I'm interested to see if the Knicks are able to actually build on what they had last year and build what we know the Knicks have with OG Anunoby. And that's a defensive monster. I want to see 24 minutes or 25 minutes of Hartenstein. I want to see 25 minutes of Mitchell Robinson. I want to see this team become a problem in these playoffs. Since we're getting into what we're looking for in the future, I want to see this Knicks team become even more than what they were last year. I want to see Mitchell Robinson and OG Anunoby on the floor at the same time. It's something we haven't seen yet. Think about it. How long OG Anunoby has been on the Knicks for. We have not seen two solidified. Even Deuce McBride, OG Anunoby, and Mitchell Robinson. If there's one thing you want to look forward to in these playoffs after the Julius Randle injury news, it's that. It's being able to watch a defensive team with Josh Hart, Dante DiVincenzo. Like, this team could be unbelievable and could be such an issue for opposing offenses. And I know you could say what you want about how hard the Knicks play during the regular season and how everything is kicked back up into gear in the playoffs when teams actually try on defense. Wait until you see what the Knicks will be on defense with those three guys, even in the playoffs. We haven't even seen it in the regular season. Just wait until those three guys get on the floor together. They can mesh and watch what they do to opposing offenses. But that's the one thing that I'm looking towards that really can make me excited about this Knicks team. I can't believe I went 37 minutes on this, but this is where we're all at. And I appreciate everyone for tuning in because I know I'm not alone with these thoughts. I know I'm not alone with this sentiment that the Knicks are in a better spot, yes, than they have been in any year previous to watching this team. If you're of the same age that I am, if you're not a Knicks fan that goes back to the 90s, and you understand that this isn't the end for the New York Knicks, that the New York Knicks will be back. And you can have all the trust in the world in Leon Rose and Worldwide Wes and Tom Thibodeau to put together and to continue building on this team. It's not over. The moves that they've made, they've put themselves in a perfect position to go out and get a star. And I know everyone after the Anunoby trade and them getting rid of Quickly and Barrett said that those were two of the pieces they would have been able to trade for a big piece on a championship team. They did. OG Anunoby is that piece. He is like the thing that meshes everyone together. When he's on the court, this Knicks team is different. As I said earlier on in this live, OG Anunoby is a bigger X factor than Julius Randle. He's not a better player. He's not as important of a player as OG Anunoby is. The Knicks need to get him back. If they want any chance to make us happy, to make us excited about something with New York basketball, it's getting OG Anunoby back. It's quitting the excuses. It's not having to hear from at New York Knicks PR on Twitter. OG Anunoby is suffering discomfort in his elbow. He's going to miss the rest of the regular season. I don't want to hear that. No excuses. If he's not ready, you don't bring him back. But if he is, you're damn sure you bring him back. You put him on the court, and you watch him do his magic on defense and offensively, which is something that we were starting to witness more and more of before his injury and Randle's injury in that Heat game. Putting up 26 against the Nuggets. They put up 17 that game. I don't know 100% off the top of my head. It's been a long time. And I tried to put that out of my mind, that game and that stretch. Because does it really mean anything at the end of the day? No, not for this year. But it does show us. It gives us a glimpse of hope. It gives us a glimpse of what this Knicks team can be going forward. And that's a championship contender. Say what you want. We could all be as upset as we want to be right now. Fairly. I mean, the Knicks just lost their second best player. The Knicks just lost the guy that has been able to terrorize opposing defenses. And we lost the guy that was able to mesh perfectly with our 1A star in Jalen Brunson, our MVP candidate in Jalen Brunson, who's done an admirable job at keeping the Knicks afloat since these injuries. And to think at one point that we lost Brunson too for the year with that knee injury, that nerve injury that he suffered, the knee contusion that we all thought was a torn ACL or something worse. And how could you blame us with all the injuries that we've seen and we've suffered through this season? So going forward, I'm going to try to have as much hope as possible. I'm not going to have these lofty expectations that the Knicks can win a championship, and I plead with you all to not have the same expectations that we all had before as well. Because at the end of the day, your mental health is going to take a steep decline if you think that this team could win a championship. It's not happening. It's not happening. Maybe next year, but this year, that's all out the window. So, all right, everyone, thank you all for tuning into my first ever live. Hopefully do more of these, especially now with this potential playoff run upcoming. We really have no idea what that's going to bring, but stay tuned to this Twitter. Stay tuned to this X, whatever. Stay tuned to my YouTube channel as well for the two people or whatever on the YouTube right now. But thank you to everyone for coming out for this live stream. Let's hope the Knicks are able to put together a run that none of us are expecting. It won't happen, but fingers crossed. All right, everyone. Speak to you all soon.